is a BSL video of the Access to Literature report by Jamie Hale, Artistic Director of CRIPtic Arts, and Ruth Harrison, Director of Spread the Word. It covers the title page, contents, introduction, what is access, context, and methodology parts of the report. The other report BSL videos can be found at https://www.spreadtheword.org.uk/projects/cryptic-write-the-word. The Access to Literature report is supported from public funds by Arts Council England. Access to Literature report by Jamie Hale, CRIPtic Arts, and Ruth Harrison, Spread the Word, October 2022. Contents. 1. Introduction, page 3. A. What is access? Page 4. B. Context, page 4. 2. Executive summary, page 6. 3. Methodology, page 8. 4. Findings and analysis, page 10. A. Focus groups, the retreat, page 10. B. Surveys and focus groups, page 12. C. Emerging best practice, page 20. 5. Impact learnings, the retreat, page 21. 6. Recommendations, page 22. A. Audit, engage and act, page 23. B. Systems change across the sector, page 25. 7. Conclusion, page 27. About, page 34. Acknowledgements, page 35. Resources, page 36. The Access to Literature report is available in the following formats: executive summary, text, doc and PDF, audio, BSL video, easy read. Full report, text, doc and PDF, audio, BSL video. Case study, text, doc and PDF, audio, BSL video, easy read. These formats can be accessed at https://www.spreadtheword.org.uk/projects/cryptic-writes-the-word. 1. Introduction. Everyone is in a state of suspended disability, and the stigmatized idea that we have around disability or care is ridiculous when you realize and understand that we were all going to require care, help, support, accessibility of some sort at some point in our life. Retreat participant. Care? I'm being kind of flippant, but it's so frustrating to feel like you're a box being ticked for diversity, and that's where the caring stops. Writers' Survey respondent. The Access to Literature report presents the first national picture of the barriers deaf and disabled people experience in accessing the literature and publishing sectors as writers, creative producers, and audience members. It reports on the findings of the research carried out by Spread the Word and CRIPtic Arts between June and October 2021. This research took a mixed methods approach, consisting of focus groups and surveys with both deaf and disabled people and literature organisations. It was inspired by an online deaf and disabled writers retreat that prioritised access requirements, run by CRIPtic Arts and Spread the Word, and the lessons we learned from that experience. The research objectives were to understand the barriers to access in the literature sector for deaf and disabled writers, creative producers and audiences, and how these might be addressed. Baseline the demand and need for more accessible opportunities and potential for further research in this area. Identify the support and upskilling needs of organisations to make their programmes more accessible and increase awareness about access. Identify best practice on access and inclusion among literature organisations and networks. We hope that this report will start to build an evidence base to support change, opening up a wider conversation regarding access and inclusion in the not-for-profit literature and publishing sectors, as well as with funders to support more opportunities for deaf and disabled writers, creative producers, and audiences. The Access to Literature research and report have been made possible through support using public funds by Arts Council England, Jamie Hale and Ruth Harrison. A. What is access? An event that has been created to be accessible is an event that does not disadvantage deaf or disabled people from participating. The disadvantages deaf and disabled people face can be quite broad and diverse. We work from the social model of disability, which says that people are disabled by the barriers they face societally, which are imposed on top of the limitations that may arise from some underlying conditions. Organisations and spaces have the obligation to eliminate those barriers and make themselves as accessible as possible to all deaf and disabled people. They must be designed so that people can access them without experiencing additional disadvantage or negative impact on their conditions. All information provided should be provided in a way that equally meets the needs of all participants, and that there should be clear solutions to remedy problems that arise with accessibility. The access provisions that may be required are quite broad, ranging from British Sign Language interpreters and wheelchair access to providing information in plain English, or further in advance than is the organisational norm. It might also require an approach to scheduling or event design which is flexible to meet the needs of conflicting access requirements. It is important to add that no event can be fully described as fully accessible without knowing the access needs of the people who are attending it. B. Context. There are 14.6 million disabled people in the UK in 2021, representing 22% of the total population. 21% of disabled people are of working age, 1 in 5 of the population. The total spending power of families with at least one disabled person is estimated at £274 billion a year. Disabled people have higher life costs than non-disabled people. After housing costs, the proportion of working-age disabled people living in poverty is 27%, which is higher than the proportion of working-age non-disabled people at 19%. This is before the impact of the current cost of living crisis. The COVID pandemic has disproportionately affected and continues to affect deaf and disabled people. With the sector back to normal, for many deaf and disabled people, a return to pre-pandemic practices means a decrease in accessible provision. Workshops and events are returning to being in person at a time when many are still shielding following the pandemic. This also means a return to events without physical access provisions or auto captions, and in places where transport can provide a further barrier. In 2020, Jamie Hale and Spread the Word ran the first free online deaf and disabled writers retreat in the UK, with a focus on making it accessible for the participants. The retreat included BSL interpretation throughout and had notable facilitators, including Anne Finger, and Raymond Antrobus, and covered fiction, poetry, and creative non-fiction. This retreat was a response to the pandemic and aimed to create a space that centred deaf and disabled people. The partnership between Jamie Hale, CRIPtic Arts, and Spread the Word has continued through running the UK's only sustained, free and accessible online space for deaf and disabled writers and poets, the CRIPtic and Spread the Word Salon. In September 2022, with partners, they launched the UK's first Disabled Poets Prize. The majority of this work has been unfunded. Whilst a literature review was out of scope for this report, there appears to be very little UK-based data and research on deaf and disabled writers, creative practitioners, and audiences' experience of and engagement with literature activities and opportunities across the not-for-profit literature and publishing sectors. From Arts Council England's 2020 to 21 data report, literature national portfolio organisations, regularly funded organisations, report 16% of their audiences and 7% of their workforce are deaf and disabled people. No data appears to be available on disabled-led literature organisations. The Royal Society of Literature's Room of My Own showed that 74% of writers who are disabled or have a long-term health condition have a lack of income, compared to 67% of non-disabled writers or who do not have a long-term health condition. The Publisher Association's annual diversity survey of the publishing workforce shows that 13% of disabled people are employed in the sector. In Kat Mitchell's Access Denied, Disability, Employment and the UK Publishing Industry, 40% of disabled publishing job seekers found a publishing industry event inaccessible. No data on deaf and disabled writers published by the industry appears to be available. You can find the BSL video of the executive summary from the Access to Literature report on our website. 3. Methodology. We've researched the experiences of deaf and disabled writers and creative practitioners in the literature sector alongside literature sector organisations. We deployed a grounded research approach, meaning that we built knowledge through the data we gathered from deaf and disabled writers and literature organisations. Looking at the themes to emerge from the research, rather than starting with a theory and testing it with our own research subjects. Our datasets encompass both quantitative and qualitative data. Predominantly, quantitative data was captured in online surveys for both practitioners and literature organisations or publishers, and qualitative data was focus groups, again for both practitioners and organisations. The research topics that set the parameters for the research were scoped during an online deaf and disabled-led writing retreat. These were then tested in the subsequent surveys and focus groups. The research period was between June and October 2021. The online retreat for deaf and disabled writers of poetry, fiction, and/or scripts ran between Thursday the 29th of July and Sunday the 1st of August 2021. It was promoted as an open call by application between the 4th of June and the 7th of July 2021. 38 deaf and disabled writers applied. 14 were selected, with the original target being 10 from across the UK. As part of the retreat, there were 2 focus groups on Sunday the 1st of August 2021, led by external facilitator, poet and disability rights activist Daniel Sluman. The questions addressed were: 1. What do deaf and disabled writers, producers and audiences need to access literature events? And what are the barriers to progressing as a writer? And 2. What had been the experience of retreat participants of the access provisions we had put in place? The learnings and themes from these focus groups, then informed 2 online surveys. One targeted at deaf and disabled writers, creative producers and audience members, and one for not-for-profit, voluntary and commercial literature organisations or publishers. Both surveys ran through SurveyMonkey and were promoted to our target audiences between the 24th of August and the 11th of October 2021. The surveys tested people's experience of access to literature and the barriers for deaf and disabled people to progress as a writer and/or a producer. We received responses from across the UK. 1. Deaf and disabled writers, creative producers and audiences. 68 responses, of which 96% were writers or poets, and 10% creative producers. 67% are attendees at literature events. 2. Not-for-profit, voluntary and commercial literature organisations or publishers. 9 responses received. A. 33% of respondents were leaders of charity organisations, 33% of volunteer-led organisations, and 33% commercial business. B. 22% Arts Council England national portfolio organisations, and 44% were in the receipt of funding from Arts Council England. C. Respondents' primary areas of work: 67% events, 55% workshops, 44% festival and publishing, and 33% writer development prizes. Despite very proactive promotion, including direct and targeted mail-outs and social media, and extending the survey deadlines, the response from the literature sector is extremely low. From a research perspective, such low responses would not have been included in the results. However, given the paucity of research into deaf and disabled writers' access needs to engage in the literature sector, we have included sector survey contributions. Informed by the themes identified during the research focus groups and building on emerging findings from the 2 online surveys, we ran 2 qualitative focus groups to test these results, one for deaf and disabled writers and creative producers, and one for literature organisations or publishers. Both were open to practitioners and organisations from across the UK and self-selecting sign-up. Jamie Hale and Vivi Refford-Sinnott, Artistic Director at Little Cog, facilitated each group. The focus group with deaf and disabled writers and creative practitioners asked what is working well at the moment and what participants would like to see improve in future. It took place on 7th of September 2021. 15 signed up, with 10 participants. Everyone was a deaf and disabled writer or creative practitioner. All participants were paid. The focus group with literature organisations asked about their current practice and priority needs for upskilling staff and volunteers. It took place on the 24th of September 2021. 10 signed up, with 7 participants. Leaders of organisations funded by Arts Council England, grassroots of voluntary and commercial organisations who run events, workshops, development opportunities, publishing programme, festivals.